What If Dark Tomb of Dracula, I can barely find where the what if is. It just feels like a Blade story gone wrong at the end, but there's no real big what if. And even then, when you end up having these, in my mind, you do have like, what if Blade never got turned into a half vampire? What if this person ended up being Blade? This is just What If Dark Tomb of Dracula. And you jump in, and I don't know how many people are huge Tomb of Dracula fans and have read everything, but they do end up having Marv Wolfman, co-creator of Blade, doing this, and he wrote Tomb of Dracula, all these things going on. So I think that maybe he thinks at this point that a lot of people know what he's doing here, because me and you, unfortunately, we don't know too much about the Tomb of Dracula stuff. We love Blade, so we're here for Blade. And then when you get into it, though, I struggle to find the what if, and it just seems at the end is, hey, what if Blade ended up dying? I'm like, all right, well, we'll see. There's a little, like, somewhat twist, but it doesn't feel like a twist, but we'll see how this goes. It is What If Dark, The Tomb of Dracula, written by Marv Wolfman, David Cutler on pencils, inks by Scott Hanna, David Cutler, Victor Olazaba, and Liv Say. I don't know why we have that many inkers. Cutler's by Antonio Fabella, D. Conniff, or Kniff, and Edgar Delgado, VC's Travis Lanham on letters. Too many people you're paying for this thing. And again, it's pretty bad. It's non-offensive bad. You end up kind of scratching your head at the end. If you like Marv Wolfman and kind of give the idea of like, hey, I want to support him a little. Yeah, I like Marv Wolfman, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to read it and review it with you, is just because it was Marv Wolfman doing it.
Me too. I was excited for that, yeah, like you say, because it was him, Jim. And I've read a few of the old 70s run, the late 70s, early 80s, and they're really good. He did a really good run, didn't he, on Tomb of Dracula? It's one of the most popular ones, I think, from the 70s.
Yeah, and I ended up reading a couple. I haven't read all of Tomb of Dracula,
no,
but I've read,
neither.
Blade's First Deal, and I've read a couple issues, different ones that kind of get suggested to read, and they're pretty good. And so in this, I don't know if maybe it should, like, even the art, which it's okay. There's a point when Dracula and Blade both become bats, and it was hard to tell the difference between them. Also,
that made me go batty, that, I tell you. Really
at
did.
one point, do you think, because in my mind, it's a weird play, like, you ended up having the art, and then they stretched it a bit, because there's some panels, especially with Blade, where his face looks kind of like elongated, like horizontal. It was very odd.
Yes.
Things just kind of threw me off.
It's a bit all over the place at times, isn't it? It's not very consistent, and you were saying like there's a lot of inkers on that. Maybe they had to rush it, Jim.
Maybe that was it. Maybe they were trying to get this thing, and this guy did that while the other did that. I don't know, but in the whole play, it's kind of a house-style, cartoony even deal, and I think that maybe it should have been more of a horror feel. Maybe just go full out into the horror, because the art wasn't very horrific in that way. It wasn't gritty. It didn't feel dark. Everything felt bright and just kind of a bit cartoony, and that kind of threw me off. But you end up starting out in this, and you have This Was Then, and you have Dracula. He's going to go and kill Harker. And he has kind of realized, okay, he's trapped. He's in this opera house. I can go get him. And then at the last second, he just kind of chucks him off the balcony, but he doesn't kill him. He then goes off to attack a woman, and then that woman ends up being protected by Frost, Deacon Frost, who isn't, a vampire yet, because then Dracula turns him for him to get the call that Blade's mom is giving birth. So he goes off, bites the mom, and thus we have Blade. So a lot of that is a little different as far as but not that much different. We get Blade. He's raring to go. Harker is crippled now. Dracula wonders what the heck's going on, because Dracula through this is kind of concerned. Why did I go off? Why didn't I take care of Harker completely? Why did I go there? And is that that's not really the what if, because it just changes things that ended up being the same things anyway. So when you get this, really, it ends up being a book where there might be some cool ideas. There's not enough room for him. So what Marv Wolfman's going to do is, in his head, I guess, let me show random scenes as we lead to the end that might have been cool, but they're only a little bit odd or a little bit different. But most people won't even know the difference, and most people will want to see some of the cooler things expanded, because the actual what if story isn't that great. So you get 27 years later jumps that Blade's 27. So we can have him going, Dracula hears, oh man, this Harker guy, he has teamed up with a bunch of vampire hunters. This is bullcrap. I got to take care of this. And so he goes to take care of it, but pretty much gets Blade first, runs into Blade. But Blade has his team here. This is what I want to see more of. You end up having Rachel Van Helsing. You have Blade. You have Frank Drake and Quincy Harker. Harker is in what looks like a military-based missile launching wheelchair. I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool. Also, people don't know Frank Drake. He's a descendant of Dracula. So you have some cool things here.
Yeah,
And obviously, Rachel Van Helsing. And it's like, hey, we're going to take care of you, Dracula. And Dracula's like, oh, crap, this is too much for me, and leaves. So that when he leaves, he's like looking over London town and thinks, man, and you're getting a story here where there's a little play. Like there's some interesting thing of maybe Dracula realizing, I don't know how this world works anymore with the kids and their TikToks and this and them. So like, and then he's trying to adjust. He has this weird play of like, maybe I don't understand how everything ticks now. I'm behind in the times. I got to get up to speed.
Is this, Jim, is this meant to be now, like this 27 years later? Do you think it's meant to be? The art like throws me off. I'm not sure what, where we are, what decade, whereabouts. Time setting's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're right, because of the idea, like you would think at a point, when he gets turned, like 27 years later would now be the 70s of the deal. But it looks like, I'm telling you, London looks very modern.
It does look modern. And then sometimes it looks old. It's weird. It's a weird
You
mix.
have one little weird play where you have a Toys R Us and they're kind of not around anymore. So does that give you a play? But to me, it looks modern. Right. But even so, it's, old school Dracula. He would even have problems, in any sort of deal. But he's trying to figure this out and then says, what I think I'll do is I will just send out my minions. I haven't fed these vampires and they'll just kill people. But there's no real rhyme or reason for these things.
There's no setup, is there? It just happens. And
you get the cool team, Helsing, Blade, Drake, Harker. That is kind of a part of a bunch of different teams. You end up Midnight Suns, you end up having the Night Stalkers, but this isn't quite the full deal, and there's some mix and match. But you want to see more of that team.
I know. You do nothing with them. You set them up. It's like, oh, great, this team looks cool. And then nothing happens, does it? It's like just Blade and Dracula.
They're there. They're only in one other scene because where Blade goes and again, I'm going to get everybody to attack everybody in London, and I'm going to get them. And then Blade shows up to be like, okay, I'm going to end up, taking care of that. It's holiday time. There's a lot of crowds, and you end up having the attack by these vampires. And then Blade shows up to stop it, but then gets bitten by Dracula. So there might be the what if.
This is the what if, isn't it? Yeah.
We're already halfway through and we're already throwing things at everybody kind of to confuse them. But so the what if of Blade, could Blade be turned? Could he become full vampire? Well, he goes back to his apartment and he ends up fighting his girlfriend Saf and turning her into a vampire. Dracula says, just as I commanded you. Blade says, no, I'm still doing on my own volition. I wanted to turn her so we could be together forever. Let's fight.
Bat as well, this bat fight, this made me laugh. I know I shouldn't, not meant to be laughing, but it just looks stupid. The faces on these bats, it's like, okay, I think I can tell who they are now, but you were saying it's very bright, it's very colourful all the way through, and that spoils the atmosphere for me.
This idea of, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and writing the script might have sounded pretty cool. We'll have Dracula and Blade as back. It's very cartoony. It ends up looking like Furbies with wings.
It does, yeah.
At one point, you end up where Dracula's like, I'm going to take you down. I'll just kill you, because you end up where Dracula's, what happened? I thought I turned you. And then Blade's like, I'm only half vampire. Well, that's what you've always been. He goes, well, I'll kill you. Slices his throat. Blade, as the bat falls, and then just doesn't.
And he's all right. He's calling Dracula. Like,
yeah, and then he's like calling, paging Dracula. Bueller. And so you end up, even at that one panel, when you look and he's falling, it's like, you have to give a giggle when he's like, oh no, like, I don't even know what's going on in that. So he ends up paging Dracula and then says, oh man, I'll get you later. And so then you go back and you see that team again. And this is the only other page with them where they're like, I don't know. And you don't even get exactly what they're saying at first, but then you can kind of make, they think that he's turned full vampire.
Right.
And he tells him, no, I haven't, with the idea, listen, you tan and vampires, they end up getting killed by the sun. I do neither, so I'm cool, right? They're like, yeah, whatever, and he has a plan.
I'm in control.
There's nothing to this, and then you go off, then Dracula goes back to Castle Dracula. He has his brides there.
He's in a bad mood, Jim. He's steaming, isn't he?
Yeah, he's mad. And he comes and he gets one of the ladies, and he's like, hey, get over here, bride. I want to know, why did I not kill Harker? Why did I go off and attack that rando lady? His poor bride has been sitting on just a throne of skulls in Transylvania. How the heck does she know? She says, maybe she didn't please you, but I will. And that's the thing. These ladies are just like whatever Dracula says. If Dracula comes in and says,
I love you.
Yeah, they're sycophants, which he says, but that's what he set them up to be. When he comes in, these are the ladies where he's like, man, I don't think I'm a very good Dracula. No, man, you're the best Dracula. He's like, all right. They're the hype men or ladies. That's it.
Yeah,
he's like, man,
yeah.
Like Blade, he's pretty cool. I wish I was cool. You're cool, Dracula.
You're cooler than him.
He's like, all right, let's go. So he says, why? Now, in this place, says, why did I go after that woman instead of Harker as I had planned? He was my enemy. She was nobody. This poor vampire lady has no clue what he's saying. Even what she responds doesn't make sense. Maybe she didn't please him. Well, it was a nobody. It pleased nothing. He ended up going and kill her. And he's like, you useless sycophant, cracks her neck. I'm like, really? Like, that's
just
what you get for being
like
the hype lady. You're just trying to be nice.
That's what loyalty gets you with Dracula,
That's what
Jim.
gets you with Dracula. So then Dracula's really mad. Like, hey, you're waiting for Dracula, like, what he really, like, in this, the what if to me then becomes like, man, I kind of like Blade because he talks crap to me and gives it to me real. He gives me the real talk. Like, I want it to end with Dracula there. Blade comes in, turns the chair around, spins his hat, and talks to the kids. Talks to the Dracula like a real... No, he's like, hey, all you minions, come on, let's gather. He's like going through the streets, just gathering up the vampires and says, all right, we're going to take care of Blade. Goes back to the castle, which now Blade has killed everybody in, and just Blade.
1 minute, Dracula has an army of the undead, doesn't he? 1 minute, he opens the door. Next minute, they're gone. They're all dead. They were behind him, weren't they?
Here's a funny play here. There's only one little panel you have to look at it because almost all of them are dead. The rest of them run. You see them behind Dracula, hightailing it out. I'm like,
I totally missed it.
Like, Dracula controls them. They wouldn't run. Dracula would send them ahead. So Blade and Dracula go at it, and they start fighting, and here is the big twist. The idea where Dracula's fighting, and he says to Blade, guess what? Guess what, Blade? You're really turning into a full vampire. I can tell because look at the way you're fighting. I'm like, no, he's just
I'm making
Dracula.
You angry, aren't I?
Yeah, angry. But Blade, to me, isn't like, it's not like a Doctor Strange who's like always trying to be calm and he's like almost like a robot at times. Not giving Cumberbatch, any dissing there because he's a gem, but Blade's a guy who comes in angry. He's like, and he's got that action
attitude.
Movie lines, right? The attitude. So when Dracula's like, I can tell, look at you. But he is kind of turning more vampiric. And then Blade gets mad. He kills Dracula for what I will have to remind everybody, the 8 millionth time. Dracula constantly dies and comes back. So,
Jim, just look at this panel as well. When he kills him, 1 minute Dracula's got his head. Next minute, he's got no head. And there's no, explanation for that.
And I think that the idea where to kill him, you're going to behead him, but it looks like he stabs him through the heart. But then they messed it up and thought that he beheaded him. It makes no sense. So then Blade throws his wooden blades aside and he calls Harker, do it. Do what I want. At this point, I kind of, and I'm a dummy. I figured out, okay, what's going to happen is he's going to kill himself because he doesn't want to become full vampire. He actually realized it before he set this up. And he's like, do it. Blow up Castle Dracula. All right. And they drop a firebomb on it and it goes up. Everybody burns inside. Blade dies. Dracula's already dead again, but he'll die. And then you end up where Harker and the Drake and Rachel Van Helsing, they're watching it burn. And like, man, that was pretty crazy. And even then when he calls, he's like, hey, Harker, what up, Blade? Don't call me Blade. call me Eric. And they have to correct each other when they're watching it burn. And like, well, Frank, Rachel, I think we're done. We should go. And then Rachel goes, sounds about right. And then it says, what if that were the end? I'm like, well, what if this was good? Because it wasn't. It was bad. The what if, they're so watered down now. I'm waiting for the what if Bruce Banner was lactose intolerant. Oh my, I want to see what happens there. There's not really that idea. Nobody, like, this would be somebody rambling on at a comic store online, like, hey, what if, like, Dracula bit Blade, and then he went off and he thought that he wasn't going to turn, but then he turned him, and then at the end, Blade killed Dracula, and then they bombed the castle. I'm like, what are you talking about? It sounds like Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney. Because at the end, he goes, that'd be awesome. That's all. It's nothing. It's still nothing, but it's also, it's kind of like, it's not anything that's going to get anybody pissed off. But if you...
No, you're right.
I said I wanted to do it because I like to support Marv Wolfman.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, as I say, because, yeah, his name is on it.
But it's not very good. It's not very good. It's not going to wow people. I think there's 2 reviews and there's like a 5 and a 6, like something like that. So it's not that we're missing.
No, it's not a terrible book, is it, Jim? It's not like, oh, this is really bad, it's badly written. It's just, it feels like they tried to put too much in. There weren't enough pages, or it was rushed. It gets very rushed at the end with the art, as you were saying.
Art and just the story just has to end. So there are some neat things that throw the what if away. I want to see that team. I want to end up maybe, updating some things with Dracula, have some fun with that.
That could have been cool, yeah.
Yeah, but this isn't great. So what would you give it?
I'm like those 2 scores you say on the comic book roundup. I'm between, so I'm going to give it a 5.5 because it's Marv Wolfman.
Yeah, I think I'll go 5.5 as well.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.